Hello there, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to demo two tone paper sketchbooks. I'll start by showing you my first tone sketchbook, and then in the first demo you'll see my process as I create a still life with just two pens and then a watercolour version. Following that will be a floral piece where I simplify the elements to basic shapes and tone. Along the way there'll be plenty of tips for using paper like this. My name's Omar, I'm an artist, illustrator and author, and I help artists improve their skills by sharing my knowledge of filling over 40 sketchbooks. First of all, let's talk more about why I love using toned paper. This sketchbook was something that I created for my own sanity in the summer of 2022 because I was pretty close to burnout. I had just finished writing a book. I was rushed off my feet with client projects, and most of my days seemed to be spent hunched in front of Google Docs. So I really needed to fill a sketchbook with images that I wanted to draw. So that's why I chose sea life. I still have a great desire to go scuba diving again. These tonal studies gave me enough space and time to connect with my sketchbooks again using a playful approach. I also really enjoyed researching all the different types of sharks or turtles. So this half of the sketchbook was really just for me. It was 20 minutes every day. I wasn't following any strict tonal principles at this stage. I keep returning to the word playful because my strokes were getting very expressive and I was really becoming looser. You can see in some of the white marks, which is ink at this time, because I went through so many different white markers trying to achieve the effects that I wanted. I really learned so much about embracing that joyfulness. I wanted it like a sketchbook snack, so that I had 20 minutes alone in the afternoon with just these dolphins and my black and white pen. I did ask people, do you ever create tonal studies or use toned paper? And the majority of people said, oh, I've never really done anything like this. So when I presented this sketchbook, they were quite amazed. Although the process is so simple, it was something that many people hadn't really seen often. The fruit and vegetable studies I've got in this sketchbook are a lot closer to what I was taught in art lessons. So we're using white to represent the lightest edges. I will talk more about this as I demo, but it's basically breaking everything down to its absolute simplest shapes and forms, and this really helps in so many different ways. And you can see I've also used negative space where I'm trying to introduce the shadows. It really is a case of trusting the tone paper is there to support you with your sketch. I know we want to fill in all the missing pieces, but the tone paper is doing half the job for you. And it really helps in so many different ways, and especially for me as a food illustrator, it's very important for me to keep studying like this. So first off, we have the Hahnemuhle toned watercolour sketchbook. It's 14 by 14 centimeters and is 200 GSM. It says on the back, suitable for all wet techniques. Let's take this wrapper off. It has a cloth bound cover with an elasticated band to keep the sketchbook closed. Inside it's a light beige colour, very warm in tone. The pages seem quite smooth for watercolour. This still life image is from Unsplash, which is a royalty-free stock library. If you look closely, you'll see there's highlights on the top rim of this jug, and also the handle and the right hand side of the nectarines. What I sometimes do is duplicate the image on my phone or iPad and turn it into black and white so that I can see a better range of values. This really helps me when I'm trying to simplify things down for sketches like this. Before we start my study in this Hahnemuhle sketchbook, I want to show you the two pens that I'm going to be using for those initial studies. This one is the Pentel brush pen in sepia, and it creates a lovely effect like that. Or if you squeeze the barrel, it lets more ink flow and it's a lot more solid, so you can create quite a lot of textured lines and also thin lines like this. And I really love using brush pens in general. And the other one is my trusty Posca pen in white. I always like to test it out on a piece of paper like this first, in case it goes blobby when we get to this piece. We might have some accidents, so let's watch out. I want to show you the comparison between a toned study and a watercolour version. So I'm going to work on this page here. It's only going to be a study. Just going to quickly. Now, looking at this reference, the horizon line, or rather the top of the table, is probably, no, it's almost halfway. It's probably more like here. So I'm just going to give an indication of that. And the majority of that vase is white. The bulbous area and the stem goes something like that, with the spout about here. Sorry for the slightly croaky voice. I think I've got hay fever, which is why. So this is the rim. And also I want to say I am not wearing my glasses, which I normally do, and that's actually helping me separate out the spaces. So this edge here is going to be, this is the background. I'm not going to fill in the entire background. Let's say it ends about there. But I do want to fill in the area between the stem and this handle. So let's fill in this negative space here. And it's just a shape. That's literally it. I'm not looking at the actual the outline of the handle. I'm looking at the shape that it creates. It curves around like that, and this is going to be black. Not black, it's a dark brown sepia. And now about here we start to get the edges of those nectarines. 1, 2, and even though there are 2 there, value wise it is very difficult to tell apart, so I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And all I'm doing is looking at the shapes of these shadows. I'm not trying to figure out the nectarines themselves. It's just shape that I'm interested in. And this is now, this area here is now the edge of the bowl. Let me work out. So the edge of the nectarine sort of ends here, almost directly in line with that negative space of the handle. And I'm going to let the paper show through for the bowl itself. So I think that's kind of a mid-range value. Gosh, I'm getting a little bit lost. So I think what I need to do is add the white of the rim of the bowl, which is more prominent just here. Now I haven't left enough space here, but so this is the other, the inside of the bowl now. Yeah, I've not left enough space, but not to worry. But what I do want to include to show you, I'm just going to extend it out a bit. We've got the horizon line here. Yeah, here, this is the, so all this above here is the background. I would say this area, sort of a semicircle shape, is dark. This edge is defined by the white vase, sorry, it's yellow, but in my black and white version it's now appearing a very light value, so let's just call it white. And under here it's very, very dark. We are now defining the edge of the bowl, the bottom of the vase and the edge of the bowl. And that's the foot of this vase. No, not the vase, the bowl. I'm getting myself really confused here. And it casts a shadow. And there's a white area here and a white area here, which is probably the handle, but the rest of it is really, really dark. And I know when, you know, when I start filling this in, you just think that doesn't make sense, but that is actually what I'm seeing. Sometimes what you think it should look like and what the reality looks like are 2 different things, and it can be difficult to reconcile, but it's so important to observe like this
Can you see how it's just shapes at this stage, and that's the main thing that we need to concentrate on. Now it's a little bit, the proportion is now a little bit off, but it is a study and I'm good with this. Let's add all the highlights now, and now the interior of this vase handle is very light, and if I look very closely, there's a highlight here and just the suggestion of a highlight on the edge of this middle nectarine. I don't know if art schools still teach hours and hours of life drawing lessons where it's filled with chalk and charcoal studies on craft paper, but it was certainly something that I was made to do as part of my formal art education back in the day. I didn't see the value in studies like this back then, but I really do now. I'm not going to fill in the whole background, but just fill in these features here. I think that's a pretty good study. I actually find it very rewarding to create studies like this because it's so quick, and when I come to do the colour version on the other side, I know it's going to make a huge difference because I've already studied it beforehand. I do actually have a Skillshare class on the basics of creating like this, where you carefully observe and then just use black and white to fill in the darkest and lightest areas. With the tone paper acting as the midtones, the focus is going to be on breaking down forms into their essential light and dark areas to understand the subject matter. And the link to this class is going to be in the description below, so please check it out. So now what I'd like to show you on this side is the colour version of this study, and I do think I'm going to see quite a difference if I hadn't done it. So let's start off by mixing the yellow of that jug. I'm using Winsor & Newton pans. I think I'll start off with that handle here, do this part here, leave a bit of space for that bowl. Probably goes around a little bit more like that, but I feel like I need to leave a bit of space here for the highlight. I've never actually painted in a watercolour toned sketchbook like this. Because it's the first time, I'm still trying to figure out where to leave the lightest areas unpainted. So I've decided to use the tone paper as the lightest part. I have realised the stem of this jug is just a little bit too narrow, so I've added another stroke on the side. Let's get this bowl in. I don't want it to touch that yellow because then the watercolours would merge. I could let that yellow dry a little bit more, but I'm impatient. Yes, even I am impatient for watercolours to dry. So I'm going to use Payne's Grey to make this section darker, and it's very, very dark on this foot. And I'm actually going to continue, I think, with the Payne's Grey in the shadow areas. Here it's really dark, and here, yeah, under there it's incredibly dark, and it's slightly lighter just on the forward edge here. Now let's add the nectarines. Let's do this one on the left, which is a lot more orangey red, really, and then we've got two more here, but this is incredibly, this edge on the left is incredibly in shadow. It's just touched the edge of that bowl. It's bleeding, but it's fine. I think it will add to that general effect. Let's use some of that yellow that we used on the jug. Now the bowl on this right side is also incredibly dark, so let's add that. It is like a, oh gosh, it's touching the nectarine. It's fine. It's like a half moon shape. And I'm just going to use Payne's Grey to block out that background. It comes from about here. And I can define the spout of this jug. Oh, my voice is going again. Just a little bit better, the shape of it. And I love doing studies like this because when you concentrate on shape rather than thinking, oh, you know, I've got to get the details in, it really frees you. Well, I think it helps me incredibly. Those are the tops of the nectarines. Can you see by working on the negative space, that jug is really coming along. I can actually see a tiny part of the bowl. Maybe I think the bowl extends outwards a little bit more than what I've got down here, and it's a little bit skew with. This is, again, it's just another study. It's something that is not talked about enough, is doing studies. What you see on social media is the finished thing. What you don't see are quick studies like this. Oh, I didn't mean it to go up into there. That'll do. One last thing I forgot is the dark area, the negative space between the handle and the jug. I am really pleased with such a quick study. I think that's so effective. Actually, you know what? I can extend this down. I've just realised it was this side that was slightly off. The surface of the table probably comes down to about here. These only took me 10 minutes each, but studies like this are so essential because they help me develop my observation skills even further. By working rapidly, you're forced to simplify complex shapes and capture their essential characteristics, and they are so helpful in enhancing your understanding of form and proportion. And I really love the spontaneity and freedom in working like this because the results are really dynamic and expressive. If you've enjoyed this video so far, please do give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment telling me if you've ever done toned paper studies. Don't forget to click subscribe if you want more weekly demos, sketchbook pieces, and lots of mixed media and art materials. Now let's take a look at the toned grey sketchbook by Strathmore. There's 50 sheets and they are 118 GSM. The pages are really smooth, and it is supposed to be for sketching, so it's probably best not to use watercolour in this type of sketchbook. I would say the grey is on the cooler side, and there are actually little teeny weeny fibres in there too. The image that I've chosen for the next demo are dog roses that I saw on a recent walk. There's really great contrast here between the pale petals of the roses and the very bramble-like background, which is incredibly dense and much darker in value. I'm using Posca pen and the sepia brush pen for this piece. First of all, I am taking down all the areas where the roses are present so that the positionals are there for me to work out where the rest of the leaves and the much darker areas are going to be arranged. Something I noticed straight away about using Posca pen on this Strathmore paper is it does seem to bobble and bits of the paper are coming off. I don't have an issue with this, but it's something that you might like to be mindful of. This paper is only made for graphite or pastels. However, I did not have this problem with the brush pen. If we were doing a true value study, there would just be a mass of dark behind those roses, but I actually want to pick out some of those very characteristic, very pretty leaves. I think often we fill our heads with shoulds, like it should be done like this, but I'm the person in charge of my sketchbook and this is how I want to approach it. This is my study. I think one of the benefits of using toned paper is to lessen the overwhelm of staring at a blank sheet of white paper, and it really helps you to ease up and get started by taking some of that pressure off. The midtones present in the paper also help us to harmonise different aspects of the drawing. What we're doing is basically using a very limited palette, and by leaving the toned paper to show through in the sketch and then only using black and white, the sketches have a really coordinated feel. You may well have a voice in your head telling you that you've done something wrong or that leaf doesn't go there. Try to remember that it does not have to be perfect. Please know that even professionals struggle, and I hope that will comfort you, that you're not alone with your struggle, so that you're able to get out of your head and just get on with the practice. Now it's time to add the stamens, which are the middle sticky outy parts of each flower. and they should be pretty straightforward. When I close my eyes slightly, they don't show up that much, but in order for this piece to read better, I think I do need to include them using the sepia brush pen. It's worth remembering that even with no colour, we are easily able to identify what these flowers are, and that's because our brains pay most attention to the patterns of light and dark, and then it tries to identify the objects such as flowers based solely on patterns of light and dark, and this comes from our remarkable ability of our visual system to prioritise and process contrast. And that's why contrast is such a huge fundamental when you are learning about the art making process. If you've enjoyed watching me create these dog roses on tone paper, you might be interested in a class that I've got on Skillshare called Ink and Tone Paper Create Beautiful Flowers. In this class, we look at understanding, values and simplification. Studies like this really lay a solid foundation for your understanding before introducing the complexities of colour in floral studies. These are now sketchbooks number 42 and 43, and I shall continue to fill both of these up with more tonal studies, and I truly think it elevates my art in such a way and transformed it since last year. While we often think about colour and value as two separate concepts, they are actually closely interconnected. By considering the value of a colour, whether it's dark or light, we can effectively capture the essence of an object or a scene regardless of its coloration. You may have actually seen some of these pieces in a recent sketchbook tour. Head on over and watch sketchbook tour number 34, where you'll see my top 10 favourites. And until next time, stay amazing.